Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I just want to give a quick spoiler warning for the actual game itself. I know it came out in 2019, but not everyone's played it, so let's be fair and give out that warning. All footage is captured on my laptop. It's relatively early in the story. It's around the first couple of hours to remain spoiler free, and there are some instances where the recording quality isn't fantastic, but we're dealing with what we've got. So, almost a year ago, I made a video on Borderlands 3, giving my opinion on the game, its story and the gameplay. And actually, when I uploaded that video, I actually stopped playing the game until the beginning of this year, because I was so disappointed with it. So, over the past 5 months, I've completed the game a couple of times, with a couple of Vault Hunters, and I decided to rewatch my video and see if my opinions had changed with the added DLC that has come out since then. At the time, the Krieg DLC and so on weren't in the game yet. So my first point that I made was the characters don't feel fleshed out in comparisons to previous games, specifically in 2. Pre-sequel, we'll get to there eventually. And I have to say I still agree with that. The Vault Hunters specifically don't have interesting backstories, in my opinion of course, with the exception of Mose, who was a soldier sent on a suicide mission, and is the sole survivor of her crew. I think that's a great jumping off point for a character. The others, however, are pretty meh. Zane is related to the Flints from previous games and is returning to Pandora. Great, interesting, lovely. Amara is a celebrity siren, and Flak is a robot who becomes bloodthirsty and sentient. Also, just a quick side note, why do we still only have 4 Vault Hunters? Yes, we had 4 in the first one, but 2 in pre-sequel both had 6. But really, with the poor backstory from the 4 we already have, what could we possibly hope for with 2 more? It's not just the playable characters that have a rough time in 3, but the NPCs. The only characters you interact with more than once are Lilith, Ellie and Tannis. I'm not including Marcus, as you buy SDUs and ammo etc. from him. Brick, Tina and Mordecai get the raw end of the deal. They're found on Eden 6 and get shoved back into Pandora and stay in Boomtown and nothing else to do. Moxie is used very sparingly. Zero you do 2 missions with, and he runs a crew challenge for the rest of the game. New characters introduced in 3, Lorelei, is largely completely pointless and gives you a couple of quests for coffee and burger shops to reopen. And the absolute worst character in the game is Vaughn. I know humour is subjective and it's not the voice actor's fault, but Vaughn is just not funny. For a character who's intended to be comic relief, I don't understand the direction that they went with him. For all the characters to be a bandit leader, they went with Vaughn. Why? How did Vaughn transform into a nerdy, intelligent accountant to be an annoying, half-naked moron? I know they kind of went there with the Tales from the Borderlands storyline, but I still don't understand why. It seems that the writers had their story planned out and someone said, oh wait, we haven't put enough characters in, so they half-assed it at last minute. So the next point I made was the story itself, so obviously this is the spoiler warning coming in. This plot is nonsense. I'm sorry, but Lilith not realising the rise of the Children of the Vault until it was too late is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Lilith purposefully stayed on Pandora to find the Vault Key. She would have been searching every corner of Pandora and seen it happening from the beginning, or they are implying that Sid and the Claw, which I like to call the Calypso twins, appeared and established a COV in like a day, which is so stupid. We've also established that Lilith can teleport herself. Why exactly did she stay and fight when they came to steal the Vault Key? She could have lured them away, but no. We have to nerf Lilith, of course, because the Vault Hunters need to do something. The Calypso twins are about as intimidating as Mad Care Bears. Handsome Jack might not have been a difficult fight in Borderlands 2, but the game literally starts with Jack trying to kill you and taunts you every step of the way. You know he's dangerous because you see it right from the beginning cutscene. You're told about the Calypsos by Vaughn, and you find out they're streamers. You don't actually speak to them until you finish a boss fight, and they don't establish any threat to the player at all. Fast forward to when they just kill Maya. Troy now has the phase lock ability from leeching Maya, so he's not completely useless. But again, this goes absolutely nowhere. He uses it once, and that's it. There was one point in my first run through where I thought, oh, here we go. Troy is sick of Tyreen. Maybe he will leech Tyreen too, and he will be the real enemy. But no, he dies. Tyreen leeches Troy, and she's the boss after all. She doesn't even seem that affected by it either. Her twin brother has just died, and she just carries on as normal, trying to open the vault like nothing's happened. It's difficult to really classify the director's cut DLC into the main story because, yeah, Gearbox showed us what was cut out and, yeah, that would have made it a better paced story overall. But that's the whole point. It wasn't in the final cut, and it was only storyboards and voice clips of what could have been. Not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I don't entirely believe that this was cut content. I think with the length of time between the release of the game and the DLC, I think the writers threw in what fans were asking for to appease the negative reviews from players, and to try flesh out Ava as a character from the very polarising reception of the character, who's apparently the future of the franchise. I think it may be the case for some that it's too little too late, as not everyone will buy the DLC, and some opinions still will not have changed. So in my original video, I was very negative about Ava. And yeah, my opinion still hasn't changed. The cut content did nothing to sway my opinion. Sorry, Gearbox. The diary side quest also changed nothing for me. I just don't like this brat. Wouldn't it have been more interesting if Maya was actually correct in Ava being a siren, but it was actually Tyrene's power she inherited instead of Maya's? And Maya had to keep training her to make sure she didn't lose control of her powers. Okay, so let's move on to the DLC for Borderlands 3. For me, it's been largely hit and miss. I like the Hammerlock and Jacobs DLC, Gage was thrown in for fan service and nothing else. The Krieg DLC was pretty good. Gave us even more backstory for one of the best Vault Hunters, and it was a sort of happy-ish ending, I guess. Axton and Salvador are just commentators and make no physical appearances, and again are just thrown in the fan service. The fact that we have to pay even more money to find out what happened to our characters in the previous game is just irritating beyond belief for me. I don't know how everyone else feels. So I'm going to move on to something more positive now at least. The gameplay is by far the best part of the game. The gunplay, the enemy AI, the difficulty is very well balanced. It never feels unfair, and if you get downed, there's always a ton of enemies around to get a second wind. It's the only thing of the whole game that actually keeps me coming back. The game is actually really fun. The boss fights, the raids, the loot, the guns, all fantastic. The graphics are stunning. I've always consistently thought that cel shading graphics were great. They age so well. Look at Wind Waker, 13, and even Borderlands 1 and 2. They don't age as quickly as other games. In my previous video, I noted that if Borderlands 2 had the graphics and gameplay of 3, it would have had way more players than 3 altogether, and I still stand by that. 2 is still the more enjoyable game on the whole, but 3 has it beaten hands down in gameplay. As much as the Vault Hunters themselves are pretty bland compared to their counterparts, their abilities are so fun. My personal favourite is actually Zane's Digiclone, getting a copy of the gun that you have equipped at the time you summon him. Usually I went with the route of summoning a Digiclone with the sniper while I head into the fray with a close combat. It can be quite OP later on in the game when you have actually good weapons, but it doesn't make it still too easy. Okay, so the controversial and brave moment is coming up. I have to say my least favourite of the 4's ability has to be Flax. The pets can be useful-ish, but I don't seem to enjoy using them as much as in, say, using the Digiclone or Moses Iron Bear when it comes to having a support character during gameplay. Amara, on the other hand, playing as a Siren is always a good time, and a physical-based combat Siren is a great addition, especially because Lilith and Maya were always best used at a distance. I still, however, wish we had at least 2 more Vault Hunters. I mean, look at who we got in addition for 2, Gage and Krieg, 2 of the best Vault Hunters in the series. So I guess for my final thoughts again for Borderlands 3, as a whole, it's the best the series has ever been, but it's also the series at its absolute worst. I keep coming back to Borderlands 3 for a fun time, but ignoring the story completely, and just for the gameplay. I have some faith that Borderlands 4 will keep the gameplay how it is right now, but really work on the narrative that was sorely lacking in 3. But I can't say with complete confidence that that will be the case, judging from what we've seen overall. I have to say, coming back in 2021 to play the game, I bought it on Steam when it actually did come out. And rather than playing it just on my Xbox, I have to say, playing it on PC is by far the better experience, which I also found with 2. I'm not starting a console war. I do own the consoles. The consoles are great. But if you really want to play a first-person shooter, I always really recommend playing it on PC. And that's the video. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little throwback, I guess, of me revisiting Borderlands 3 again. Next video is going to be a look into Borderlands 2, which will be way more positive, and because bias, and reasons. But don't forget to like, follow and obey, as Tyreen would say.